What's up guys, we're back for a NECA review for a bit of an older figure, one that I had never even thought I was ever going to buy until it came up for a crazy low price on one of the Christmas deals for Entertainment Earth. So today we're taking a look at the NECA Toys Gremlins, well Gremlins 2, Spider Gremlin. This thing is pretty wild looking. I have been admiring this from afar for a very long time, and I finally pulled the trigger on it, so we're going to take a look at this guy today. We've got him here in a closed package, so this is kind of different from some of the NECA stuff. There's no window on this thing. You can see a big shot of the Gremlin on the front, more of that on the side, and then more of that along with Gizmo on the back. So let's do it. Let's pull this guy out and take a look. Alright guys, here it is out of the package, our Spider Gremlin, and this thing is just, I don't know, absurd? Is that a good word to use for it? This thing's ridiculous. It's so big. And I knew it was a big toy before I even got it out of the box, but the box itself does not kind of display how big this thing is once it's fully assembled. Because you got to understand that there is a lot of depth, and there's also a lot of girth to this figure. I mean, it's got, 8 legs. So there's a whole bunch of stuff going on here. And frankly, I am incredibly pleased, especially for the cheap price I got it for. So, this guy is pretty old. I'm pretty sure it has been reissued at least once, and this might be the reissue. I would assume it is, if that's the case, but I think it's a pretty cool toy. So we're going to go through all the normal stuff. We'll start with articulation. There is a little bit to talk about, not tons, despite the fact he's obviously got a lot of legs. They all are the same. So let's take a look and see what this guy can do, and then we'll take a look at all of the other cool stuff that this guy provides. So we'll start at the head, and we'll get him in close just to make him easily manipulated here. You've got an articulated jaw, so it goes up and down. The head can go down, it goes up. It's on a ball, but the head itself is articulated independent of the neck. So you've got a little bit of more wider range of motion. So he can look down really far, which is actually really beneficial when you think about what he's going to be looking at. Obviously Gizmo's supposed to be down there. So you've got him looking down on something, and then he can swivel side to side, and you've got a decent range of motion as far as just lateral movement. The arms can go out only about that far. They do rotate. You've got rotating and single jointed elbows that are at a 90-degree angle, and then you've got hinged and rotating wrists. He is articulated at the abdomen, so you can go down really far. Like he can go all the way down basically to the legs, and then you can kind of have him stick his head out. This joint is a little loose. I wouldn't say it's necessarily a problem, but he wants to lean forward just a little bit, and I'm sure a lot of that has to do with just the overall girth and the weight on this guy, because this guy's a pretty weighty thing. You can also articulate whatever this is here, the thorax. Is that what this is? I'm not up on my arachnid biology for this review, so excuse me if that's wrong, but this guy can rotate, and it hinges a little bit as well, so you can provide a little bit of, dynamic posture with the back. Now, as far as the legs go, they are obviously their own thing in terms of articulation. They are all jointed. They do have different points of articulation. So it's mostly just a ball peg that fits into these sockets. And you do have to put this guy together. And I will say now, while we're talking about it, and this figure even came with a sheet of paper that kind of said to do this as well, heat the pieces up. So you've got these guys that come out. These are all part, and you actually pop the end pieces on. The ends of the legs are what you assemble. So heat this part up, and then they just pop right in. But they're a really, really tight fit. Not in a bad way. Just make sure you put them in quote-unquote correctly. So as far as the legs go, they can rotate, they go up and down, and then you've got a ball peg here, so you can hinge and then rotate, swivel side to side. So you've got a lot of movement. I'm going to say, though, this guy is not necessarily the most dynamic thing ever. He's really more of a display piece than anything else, because I find that he really doesn't support his own weight very well, which is why, of course, we have the stand. So you can get, have these front legs kind of reared up, ready to attack, and then you can kind of have the back legs positioned in a specific way, make it look like he's actually walking, do something like that. So they are all very articulated, but it's going to come down to how you want to pose this guy to really get the most bang for your buck out of him. So, but that said, he is very well articulated. I'm not going to knock him for that. It's a humongous piece, and he's got these little spindly legs to keep himself up. So the stand is definitely a necessary thing here, but I'm not sure exactly how dynamic you're going to be able to get with them without using the stand. But they are really nicely jointed, and despite the fact that you do have to heat them up, I find them to be really, really sturdy in that regard. Despite the fact that he wants to kind of sink a little bit if you take him off the stand, they do seem to work really, really well. So, I think it's just more of a heat him up up to be on the safe side, not that they're actually going to break right out of the box. Let's face it though, the big draw for this thing, no pun intended, is its size, and then of course its paint apps, and its sculpt. And when I say that this thing is big, I really, really mean it, because this thing is definitely something that you want to have space for maybe before you buy it. I've kind of made that mistake already because I really don't know where I'm putting this thing, and he has a humongous footprint. So just to give you an idea, this thing is roughly about 16 to 17 inches wide from leg to leg. He's around a foot from front to back, and he's about 11 inches tall. So he is quite large, and I'll show you what he looks like next to Gizmo here shortly. But as far as the overall look goes here, I think this figure is maybe a great, or one of the greatest representations of the whole NECA. Gives you a lot more sculpt and paint than you would expect to pay for. Because this thing is, you know, it's pretty expensive to begin with. It's more than your average action figure. I think it goes for like $70 retail, roughly, give or take. I didn't pay that much. I only paid $30 on a clearance type sale. But for that, even that regular MSRP, the sculpt on this thing is absolutely out of this world. Everything, and I mean everything, on this thing is sculpted. There is no flat texture on this. Everything is kind of scaly and just, you know, very much like a bug or like, you know, some sort of little monster. Everything is sculpted. It's wrinkly, it's kind of slimy, it's scaly, it's got everything you might expect a half gremlin, half spider to have. Not to mention the fact that it does have a 1,000,001 paint apps. There really is no end to what you'll find when you start looking at this. The Spider Gremlin really has, you know, everything you might think it could possibly need, and then maybe even a little bit more. It's pretty crazy exactly what they packed into this. So each leg is individually sculpted, obviously, so there's texture on all of this. You have got little spines that run down it. You've got bigger spikes at the top. The body, the arms, has spikes, spotting, you know, tons of paint apps all over it. The carapace on the back is like an individual piece that's attached on with more spikes, with more kind of jagged edges that pop out, more paint apps. You know, the back abdomen, thorax, whatever thing I've incorrectly called it, has tons of paint apps, tons of shading, just more than you would think. The more you look, the more you see. And then, of course, you've got the humongous fin that runs down, because this is, you know, the Mohawk Gremlin from Gremlins 2, which is supposed to be the reincarnation of Stripe from the original movie, so it all kind of fits and blends together. So he gets the humongous fins and spines that run down the back, and I think those are just incredibly striking. Very, very saturated as far as colors go. You've got nice spotting all over the backs of the ears, tons and tons of detail, and it's just a great, great representation of this particular character from the movie. It's really hard to talk about all the things that this figure has just because we'd be here all day long, but just know that it absolutely looks the part. It's massive, it's imposing, and it's definitely a centerpiece of any collection or any shelf just because of the look and feel, and then of course the size too. When you see something like this, you're instantly going to be drawn to it, whether you know what Gremlins are or not. And if you don't know what Gremlins are, I mean, you should probably take care of that on your own. And then of course we have this humongous head to talk about, which I think is just an amazingly done piece here. The eyes bright and fiery with that black and yellow and red. You've got all of the kind of marbly texture and color that's inside those ears, not to mention all the line work. And then of course this nasty gaping mouth that just of course has an articulated jaw, which really makes it pop. It makes it a little more dynamic, a lot more fun to play around with. So this thing absolutely is a winner in the looks department. There's really no way to say it otherwise. If you like Gremlins, if you don't like Gremlins, it's hard to deny that NECA did a just standout job on this thing. Now, as far as accessories goes, we do have one, maybe two. I guess we'll start with the stand because it could be considered one. You don't necessarily have to use it, although I think you really should. It'll stand up on its own okay, but it really does need the stand. So it's more integral than just an accessory. So you've got the stand. I would be, you know, a little gentle when you kind of pop it in. Now, as far as accessories goes, this guy does have one actual accessory, and then he does have the stand. I'm not really going to say much about it. It's a black piece of plastic with a black rod that comes out of it. You stick it in its underside. It's a stand. The only real true accessory that we have is the spider serum vial. So this thing is, I mean, it's pretty big in its own right, and then it's got a little blue insert there to make it look like the serum is inside. It's got the spider sticker on it, and it does say flammable, and he can hold it pretty well, actually, in his hand. So when I'm displaying this guy, he's gonna be holding this for sure, because it's kind of the quintessential thing for this particular character in terms of what he uses in the movie, not to mention the fact that it's the reason that he is what he is. And like I mentioned, here is a size comparison for our Spider Gremlin next to Gizmo. And you can see that it is a humongous difference. Gizmo is obviously not a big figure to begin with, but here's a great comparison between figures that are supposed to be in scale with each other. And I think the scale is pretty decent. The Spider Gremlin was incredibly massive, but this gives you a very good representation of this guy. He can definitely be hovering over Gizmo, very imposing, very menacing. So they work incredibly well together, but you can get an idea of just how big this guy is right there. And then just to give you maybe another better representation, here he is next to a 6-inch Marvel Legend. So here he is next to Nova. I mean, you can see he barely comes up to the top of one of the joints on the legs. So this guy is incredibly big. At the very least, you can use him, as a mount for Marvel Legends probably. That's just how big he is. So at the end of the day, I am pretty happy with this thing. I really don't have any true complaints about him. I don't have any QC issues to note. I've had no problems with him. Doing exactly what the instructions said. I could pop those legs in, no problem at all. The only thing I think might be considered a negative is that he's not all that dynamic just because he does rely on the stand. At least in my experience, he doesn't stand up all that well without it, but he can stand up without it. So you could maybe do it, take your shots, and then put him back in your display. I do think he definitely needs to be displayed on the stand because it's really more of an articulated display piece in that regard. He does look incredibly fantastic. Sculpt, paint, overall design is on point. He's got the one accessory he needs. There's just really nothing to complain about. It's a cool thing if you like Gremlins, if you like Gremlins 2, if you like the Spider Gremlin. I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer. Just get your hands on it. You will not be disappointed. So that's going to do it for this look at the NECA Toys Spider Gremlin. Let me know what you guys think. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and share, and until next time.